And with that, we love her a lot, even if there is no purple lanyard. Lacey M. Johnson.
Thank you. I had a dream last night that I got up here to read, and I had found the purple lanyard, and I pulled it out of my shirt, and there was a wild celebration, but alas, it's just me. So I want to start just by saying I feel really happy and super nervous to be here and up here and to get to be part of this community. Of course, I want to express my total admiration and gratitude to all of the staff, but especially to the leadership. And also, by the way, just to say the staff, I don't know if everybody's been coming to the staff readings, but you are all such amazing writers. And somehow, oh, my watch is concerned about me. It says you are not exercising and your heart rate is elevated. It's fine. But even how amazing they are at writers, they are even better people. I feel just incredibly cared for here by everyone, and I also feel really inspired by the conversations that we've all been having, by the brilliant work of all the writers, and I really hope that each of us is able to carry a little of this special Sewanee feeling back with us into the world and to our communities where not all of us have this kind of support. I also just want to give a shout out to Nonfiction Workshop 1. And, of course, my teaching partner, Alexander Chi, whose friendship is one of the great joys of my life. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing two things with you. The first is a short part of the book that I've been working on. This version is one that's been published, but in the book, it's going to be a little bit longer and different. And this is my first time ever reading it. In a moment, you might see why. And then after that, I'm also going to be sharing something that isn't in the book exactly, but it has emerged from the research, and it has only come together this week. So it's all larval, and it's covered in that white stuff that is weird. It's that has a baby inside it. So this first piece is How to Mourn a Glacier. Ooh, look at my hand. Along the western edge of Iceland's central highland plateau, in the far east of the Borgarfjörður district, the Kaldidar, or Cold Valley, stretches 25 miles between two barren volcanic ridges, the Prestanukur system to the east and Ok volcano to the west. These volcanoes form part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the longest mountain range in the world, which runs under the ocean from Antarctica to the Arctic and into the Siberian Sea. On the valley's eastern slope, massive glaciers push dolerite boulders down the mountainsides with their shining blue snouts. The western slope rises slowly toward the summit of Ok, a low shield volcano shrouded in mist. Although nearly every mountain, stream, and valley in Iceland has a name and a history, Ok isn't particularly famous. No path brings tourists to its summit, and those who travel the one-lane gravel road through the valley floor typically take no note of Okjökull, which is a word that means ox, glacier. Jökull is an Icelandic word that means glacier, which spanned 16 square kilometers at its largest at the end of the 19th century. By 1978, it had shrunk to 3 square kilometers. In 2014, Iceland's leading glaciologist, Oddur Sigurdsson, hiked to Ok's summit to discover only a small patch of slushy gray ice in the shadow of the volcano's crater. Okjökull could no longer be classified as a glacier, Sigurdsson announced to the scientific community. It had become dead ice. One August morning, I joined about 100 scientists, activists, dignitaries, farmers, politicians, journalists, and children as they gathered at the base of Ok to mourn the lost glacier. The day began cold and gray. A cover of low clouds threatened rain. Quote, "The climate crisis is already here," Iceland's Prime Minister Katrin Jakobsdóttir told the crowd. "It is not just this glacier that has disappeared. We see the heat waves in Europe. We see floods. We see droughts." Film crews pointed their cameras while the wind whipped her hair and the paper on which she had written her remarks. The time has come, not for words, not necessarily for declarations, but for action, she said. Her message was echoed by Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland and former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and by Kumi Naidoo, the Secretary General of Amnesty International, who assured us that the planet would be fine. But if we sustain our current trajectory, he continued, humans won't be here. Naidoo passed the microphone to writer and former Icelandic presidential candidate Andri Snær Magnusson, who gripped it with both gloved hands. "Some of the students who are here today are 20 years old," he said, his voice shaking. "You may live to be a healthy 90-year-old, and at that time you might have a favorite young person, a great-grandchild maybe, who is the age you are now. When that person is a healthy 90-year-old, the year will be 2160, and this event today will be in the order of direct memory from you to your grandchild in the future." Magnusson, who wore black glasses, a black stocking cap, and waterproof pants, had written the text for a memorial plaque that was to be installed at the top of the volcano at the site of the former glacier. Like his speech, the plaque was meant, he said, to connect us to the intimate time of the future. He asked us to turn toward the mountain. I followed the crowd away from the road and up Ox Slope. Behind us, the volcanoes darkened with rain. When Sigurðsson first announced Árkjóll's death, it was reported with little fanfare. A brief program aired on television, and one short 4-line story appeared in an English-language newspaper. Around that time, 2 American anthropologists, Simone Howe and Dominic Boyer, my colleagues at Rice University, began conducting fieldwork on the social impacts of the climate crisis in Iceland. The story about the death of Árkjóll caught their attention, they told me, because Ok, which is spelled OK, was not okay. Photographs of the melting ice cap showed the caldera in the shape of an O. Inside the crater, a black rock jutting from the ice looked like a C. One Icelander they spoke with pointed out that OC is the spelling of Ok in medieval Icelandic. The mountain, they said, seemed to be writing its own name. Howe and Boyer began making a documentary about the glacier. Working with a team of Icelanders, they filmed interviews with farmers and artists who live near the volcano, and with scientists, politicians, folklorists, writers, professors, tourists, and religious leaders. When asked how they felt about the death of Árkjóll, some people shrugged and said that they were sad. Others admitted that they were hearing its name for the first time. Sigurðsson, the glaciologist, insisted to Howe and Boyer that even though Árkjóll was the smallest named glacier in Iceland, its death was a major loss. It should not feel like just brushing something off your coat, he told them. Children learn the name of Árkjóll in the earliest geography lessons. They see its name printed on nearly every Icelandic map. A good friend has left us, Sigurðsson said. After the documentary premiered in 2018, Howe and Boyer sought a sense of closure. They settled on the idea of installing the memorial plaque and asked Magnusson to write the text. It was a difficult prompt, Magnusson told me. Only a handful of people might ever climb the mountain, and fewer still would happen to stumble across the plaque. The other challenge was how to evoke in words the linkage between glaciers and memory. The oldest Icelandic texts are 1,000 years old, Magnusson said, around the same age as the ice in the country's oldest glaciers. In all that time, the Earth has been quite stable, but the Earth will have changed more in the next 200 years than in the last 1,000 years. The plaque, cast in copper, would need to cohere for a reader 2 centuries from now, he explained, while also enshrining a specific moment of urgency. Magnusson decided to address his imagined audience directly. "A letter to the future," the plaque reads in both Icelandic and English. Ok is the first Icelandic glacier to lose its status as a glacier. In the next 200 years, all our glaciers are expected to follow the same path. This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you know if we did it. As Howe, Boyer, and Magnusson planned the ceremony, the first public photographs of the plaque were released and went viral. Soon, they began hearing from people all over Europe, Asia, and North America, scientists, journalists, even the Prime Minister of Iceland, who wanted to be part of the funeral for the dead glacier at the top of the world. If we say something has died, can we also say it once lived? A few days before the memorial ceremony for Ökjökull, I met Sigurdsson for coffee on an uncommonly sunny morning in Reykjavik, hoping to learn more about why he had chosen to frame the loss of the glacier as a death. For a glaciologist, Sigurdsson has amassed an unusual degree of celebrity. His phone rang several times as we talked, and he admitted that he was not used to the attention. He was looking forward to a trip with his wife the next week to celebrate their anniversary. Sigurdsson brightened when I asked him about glaciers. "They are enormously interesting as a natural phenomenon," he said. Partly his passion was aesthetic, they just shine. But he was also interested in why they surge suddenly and without explanation. When I asked him directly if glaciers were living, he hesitated. "Things that grow and move we tend to consider animate," he said, "even if we resist the idea that every animate thing has a soul. A healthy glacier grows each winter more than it melts each summer, moves on the ground under its own weight, and is at least partially covered with a thick fur-like layer of snow. Glaciers also move on their insides, especially in Iceland, where the glaciers are made of temperate ice, which exists right at the melting point. This sets them apart from the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, which are frozen and older by hundreds of thousands of years." In Iceland, Sigurdsson said, the oldest ice was born more than 1,000 years ago, before the Little Ice Age, on the north side of Vatnajökull, the largest glacier in the country. Vatnajökull is roughly the area of Delaware and Rhode Island combined, and stands almost as tall as the Empire State Building. Ökjökull, by comparison, was young and small when it died. Ice covered the mountaintop for only a few centuries. Sigurdsson knows this because he had counted the glacier's rings, which were formed by dust each year, not unlike the rings on a tree. The rings contained a sort of memory, a record of pollen clouds, volcanic eruptions, world wars, and nuclear meltdowns. When a glacier melts, Sigurdsson explained, its memory disappears. Having memory is just one of the many ways scientists refer to glaciers in terms that make them seem alive. They also crawl and have toes. When they break off at the ablation edge, they are said to have calved. They are born and die, the latter at increasing rates, especially during the Great Thaw of the past 20 years. When Sigurdsson conducted a glacier inventory in the early 2000s, he found more than 300 glaciers in Iceland. A repeat inventory in 2017 revealed that 56 had disappeared. Many of them were small glaciers in the highlands, which had spent their lives almost entirely unseen. Most of them didn't even have names, he told me. But we have been working with local people to name every glacier so that they will not go unbaptized. Now he intends to complete their death certificates and bring a stack of them to meetings. The next to go, he thinks, will be Hofsjökull to the east. It is unusual for glaciologists to fill out a death certificate, but something concrete, like a piece of paper or a plaque, helps to make clear that the loss is irreversible. The last ice age began in the Pleistocene and ended 10,000 years ago, when Iceland was covered in a massive ice sheet thousands of feet thick. The planet has warmed, cooled, and warmed again since then. Ice has advanced and retreated, and this movement has carved the mountains and valleys that we claim as our own. But in the past several years alone, we have witnessed not only an acceleration of the Great Thaw, but also the sudden bleaching of the coral reefs, the rapid spread of the Sahara Desert, continuous sea level rise, the warming of the ocean, and record-breaking hurricanes each season and every year. This is one of the most distressing things about being alive today. We're witnessing geologic time collapse on a human scale. Climbing Auk, we scrambled for hours over dolerite boulders, pitted lava rocks, patches of thick moss, and the small streams that trickle down the volcano to the lake below. We paused for lunch before the final leg of the hike, and Magnusson instructed us to approach the caldera with reverence and humility. Elsewhere in Iceland, he explained, climbing to the summit of a mountain in silence and without looking back is said to grant the hiker 3 wishes. Wishes are sometimes too grand to be of use, Howe added, but it can be useful to imagine the future we hope to see. As we walked the last few hundred feet, I realized that we lack metaphors for comprehending the future, much less the scale of the disaster that it has in store for us. Then the mountainside leveled, and the side of the crater purged all thoughts from my head. The ice was gray, lifeless, uncanny. Iceland's Minister of the Environment stood on the boulder that had been chosen at the site of the memorial. Children surrounded him with protest signs demanding that their political leaders, their parents, and their teachers do more. When I grew up as a little boy, not very far away from here, my grandmother taught me the names of all the mountains we could see on the horizon and the names of the 4 glaciers, he said. When I visit my parents today on their farm, I can see only 3. The wind chill had dropped below freezing, and the crowd huddled together for warmth. Sigurdsson read a list of vital statistics from Åkjökull's death certificate. The age of this glacier was about 300 years, he said. Its death was caused by excessive summer heat. Nothing was done to save it. Howe and Boyer asked the children to come to the front of the crowd. We need to understand our relationship to the world in ways we haven't had to in the past, Howe said. We need to be able to imagine a new future. There was a moment of silence as the children pushed the plaque into place. The day had cleared a little, and I could see across the Kaldidalur to the glaciers on the opposite peaks. Below them, in the valley's deepest crevice, a meltwater lake was forming, already so blue and so deep. That's the end of that one. Thank you. So now for piece number 2, which doesn't have a title. Let's call it Refuge. Recently, I came across a news story about how a team of botanists had discovered a tree that everyone had thought had gone extinct, the Quercus tardifolia, a red oak that grows only in the high mountain desert near Boot Spring in the Chisos Mountains in the Big Bend area of Texas. The team knew it was in the area because a famous oak fanatic, Cornelius H. Muller, discovered it and named it back in 1932. Until the early 2000s, this is the only tardifolia anyone knew about, the one Muller had identified next to Boot Spring. The botanists converged here from the botanic gardens all across the country with the specific goal of finding the tree, which they did. But it was sick and withered, damaged by a fire, and suffering from severe fungal infection. A wildfire or drought would mean the end for the tree, for the entire species. The researchers collected cuttings from it and gave them to a guy I heard several people call the grafter, who has since grafted those cuttings onto other red oaks and distributed them to botanical gardens where they will be conserved ex situ, which means out of their natural habitat. I have to admit that before I read the story about this tree, I didn't realize that this was something that botanical gardens do. I had this idea of botanical gardens as a kind of zoo for plants, maybe like a cabinet of curiosities, like lots of exotics. I had no idea that they were sending teams of dudes on donkeys for weeks-long trips into the high mountain desert to salvage the last remaining individuals of an entire species. Maybe to you it's obvious, but to me,
It's obvious.
this heckler is Michael Eason. Michael is a conservation botanist with the San Antonio Botanical Garden, which is part of a network of botanic gardens trying to conserve global plant biodiversity. Michael is also the one who discovered the tree. He's a little prickly and evasive, and when we spoke a few weeks ago, we ended up talking for over 2 hours. And by the way, he didn't actually want to talk to me. I had to contact his friend, and the idea of his friend telling me about the trip and not him was, I think, the motivating factor. So at first he didn't tell me anything about that trip or his work that I hadn't read somewhere else, but then towards the end of the conversation, the tone started to change. And I wanted to share this bit of the conversation with all of you because it has stuck with me, and I'm not totally sure what to make of it.
I have just a couple more questions for you. I wonder, after this discovery, is there anything you're looking forward to? I'm glad that my questions are making you laugh. That's nice.
It wasn't nice.
Well, it's not like I have plans to discover another species. Rarely does that ever happen in anyone's lifetime or anyone's career. I'll probably go back to giving presentations. I used to give a lot of presentations. The first half is all doom and gloom, talking about the biodiversity we've lost to development, the invasive species coming in, the generations and generations of cattle ranching in Texas that devastated whole ecosystems. I talk about extinction. Many people think when you talk about extinctions, you're only talking about animals that live in far-off places, but here, in San Antonio, within a 50-mile radius, there's at least one plant that has gone extinct in our lifetime. That should never happen. Statistically, we should never see an extinction. It's close to 0% within 1,000 years. But we've seen 13 now in the state of Texas alone. I think it's 60-something for the United States. Those genetics that were locked into those populations are completely gone. Those millennia of evolution in those 60 plants, we'll never get that back. All of that is gone.
If the first half is doom and gloom, what happens in the second half?
We go get ice cream. No. On one of my slides, I put a photo of a Aristolochia with a pipe vine swallowtail on it. I think the caption says, just show a pretty picture. These folks I give presentations to, they're usually over 65. They want to see photos of butterflies and pretty flowers. They don't want to hear about how previous generations are responsible for all this damage. So the second half is more about hope and the steps we can take and the things we can do. There is hope. The hope is the tardifolia. I wouldn't be doing this if it was all doom and gloom.
Why are you doing this? Why have you spent almost your entire career working on plants?
Because they're amazingly intriguing. How some plants are only pollinated by one species of insect or bird or mouse or bat. The way that seeds are dispersed into their environment by rain and wind and passing animals. There's the devil's claw plant. How its whole mechanism of seed dispersal is to attach itself to an animal that passes by and carries it somewhere else and then disperses it just by shaking its leg. There's this astonishing diversity of flowers and how their whole seeds evolved over millions of years to need an animal or a breeze or a person to come along and take them just a tiny bit further. Plants are who we are. Our evolutionary history is tied with plants. We are here today because of the way plants have given us medicine and food that we ate throughout our travels as a species across this world.
Thank you for that. I don't think I have any more questions. Thank you so much for your time, Michael.
What are you working on?
Sorry?
What are you working on? What is this for?
Oh. Well, I'm a writer. I write nonfiction. I've spent most of my career writing about problems, about doom and gloom. I've written about flooding and oil spills and radioactive landfills. But last year I went to a conference for environmental journalists, and there was one particular panel that was about solutions journalism. And they talked about how studies show that when you write only about environmental problems, you increase the likelihood of inaction on your reader's part because they don't know what to do and end up feeling total despair. But if you present people trying things, even if those things fail, it can help people feel more hopeful. And when we are hopeful, we can be helpful. And feeling helpful is a way to not feel helpless. So in this book, I'm writing about the biodiversity crisis and ways that different people are responding to it, like botanists riding donkeys in the desert trying to save plants from extinction. There's a chapter about fire and longleaf pine and land divestment, and another about octogenarians spending the last years of their lives volunteering on restoration projects and prairie habitats. That's what I'm working on. That's what this is for.
Can we talk about restoration?
Yeah, sure.
There is no restoration, and there is no going back. We will never go back to what you think we had. It's like when you wake up after a dream and all you have is the memory of the dream. You're never going to go back to what an ecosystem originally was because you're already missing so many pieces of it that we just didn't even understand in time to save them.
I do know this. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm also not naive. The Curtis Prairie restoration has been going, what, 80 years? But they're still having massive, massive problems. I spoke to this guy who works on savannas who says that it takes 1,200 years for a grassland to form. None of us in any of our lifetimes are going to see the positive results that we're looking for, but people are doing it anyway. Out of hope, out of commitment, moral certitude, I'm not sure.
What is the common thread you're seeing with the people you've interviewed?
I don't know that I'm totally able to see the common thread yet, but look, I went and volunteered on this prairie restoration at Sheldon Lake. There's this guy, John Egan, who's 84 and has put in 10,000 hours volunteering on this restoration, just in his spare time. He knows he's not going to live to see the finished results. None of us will, but they had this prescribed fire recently, and afterward, the grasses came back and the forbs came back, and he thought, oh, it's working. It's working the way it's supposed to. He told me that it made it worth it, all the 10,000 hours. I guess one common thread is that I keep hearing this argument about humans, that humans are destructive always and forever, as if it's our defining trait as a species. But in fact, there are very many humans that have been tending to and caring for the world from time immemorial. That is deeply human too.
You asked, why am I doing this? Or what is the hope? Look, I feel joy when we find a new species, or I just personally see a new species I've never seen before, or when I get to witness the small, wonderful specifics of what's happening in one little square meter of this earth that doesn't seem to mean anything to anyone except for me. Like I was in Florida a couple years ago, out photographing plants in Apalachicola. If you've never been there, you should. It's absolutely beautiful. We were driving past an airport through highway construction, and I saw something on the side of the road. I parked the car on the shoulder and came back to look at whatever it was. It ended up just being this weird chlorotic something, not a flower, just something odd. Anyway, I'm literally 30 feet from this highway construction site. Cars are buzzing by, going 55, 60 miles an hour, in a little pool of water that was drying up, only an inch or two deep. There's this water moccasin who's halfway submerged, totally oblivious that I'm there. It's turning its body around these minnows that got caught in the pool, capturing them in the crook of its body. It reaches its head around one by one, and it eats these minnows. I thought, if this was on a nature program and somebody was filming this and it was talking about water moccasins or snakes or whatever, it would be so fascinating to so many people. But this was happening 30 feet from this busy highway right next to an airport, people just driving by. And here's the doom and gloom part again. Eventually, that highway is going to be widened again, and there's going to be there's going to be more people in that stretch of land. Or maybe later that day, that snake decided to cross the highway and just got smashed. Because the vast majority of people out there, they don't care. They don't care what we find or what we lose. I'm not doing this to benefit people. If I can make a difference to the natural world, then that's something that's important to me.
I appreciate that story. Thank you. Even the doom and gloom part. One thing I want to just push back on you slightly about is that you said that people don't care. But that's clearly not true, because that story about the tardifolia was everywhere. It went all over the world, that story. And you telling me that story about that water moccasin eating those minnows, now that water moccasin matters to me. But I can't imagine that into existence. I need someone to tell me it's there.
I know that, intellectually at least. That story about the tardifolia, it reached 500 million people. It was a big story. It made people feel good to learn we discovered something we thought was extinct. But what did it change? Did the garden all of a sudden get hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations to continue our work? Maybe it affected one or two people. They decided not to cut down their oak trees on their property. I have no idea.
I appreciate the realism here, but you never really know the impact of what a story might be. I know I saw that story, and it totally opened my eyes about the kind of work that botanic gardens do, that there are people trying to save plant species for the future. Inspired me. I know I'm not the only one, and everybody that I've spoken to about it is excited when I tell them to.
Well, maybe I want change to happen faster. Maybe I want policy in place for more protection. Maybe we should be putting more land away for conservation. We found a species of tree that is functionally extinct. It's a great story, it really is, and it was a great thing to find it. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night now. If stories like that can't get people to change, then what stories will?
Thank you. And now, my new friend and yours, Nate Marshall.
Terrifying. Cool. All right. Cool. Put that away for now. I'm gonna play a thing, but we won't do that right now. Maybe I'll play a thing. I don't know if I'll play a thing. We'll see. Greetings, all. It's so lovely to be here with you. Why are you clapping? It's strange. All right. Yeah. Thank you. This has been like such a great time. Again, just like so much gratitude to all of the staff, especially the leadership, but really to like all the staff, right? Like I think the details at this thing are just like so well considered in a way that I think makes it really makes a difference. Shout out to y'all. Shout out to my workshop. My incredible co-facilitator, Camille. And all y'all. So, cool. All right. I'm just going to read a bunch of new stuff. Just a bunch of new stuff. We'll start here. So, this is called Pig Elegy. All I got is elegies and love poems for you, really. You don't really need to know anything, I guess. Yeah. By 10, I bored of the toys in the catalogs that came folded in Sunday newspapers like a leaky secret told to a town gossip. Of course I wanted books, nerd that I was. 3 on the list: Animal Farm, Roots, the autobiography of Malcolm X. All 3 in their own way said swine was not something to eat. And I never took them up on it. Not for all the years wearing ankhs and adoring the conscious. Not for all my friends over the years of every possible Islamic extraction, bean pie selling to breaking fast together with the sweet knot of a date shared at iftar. Not for the diets I tried in the years my slim child's body betrayed me and spread wide as spring sky. Not even for my big sister who has sworn off all red meat for as long as I can remember. But why do I still kill the hog? My grandmother loved pork rinds and Chicago sports teams and showering us in her tongue-in-cheek epithets. My wife prefers ham over holiday turkey, and it makes her fit in my family tree. My mama took years to learn to make the small pot of gumbo without the filthy beast, so my sister and my Abrahamic homies could feast on New Year's Day. My daddy, the weekend, I come back to our hometown to get a fancy award and stay downtown in a fancy hotel and have a fancy meal in my honor, brings me several sagging pounds of pork, foiled and bagged up, so that me and my wife don't need to go out to eat for nothing. And this is the most honor I can imagine having on my plate. My plate, styrofoam and haram and holy as working people, feeding themselves with something delicious, with something filthy, with something that carries the calories to keep you going after a long day. Cool. All right. Cool. This is called Juke Party Elegy. I guess all you really need to know, juke music is like a sort of specific kind of music that was like very popular in Chicago when I was growing up. It's basically like sort of sped up house music, kind of mixed in with hip hop. And like, you know, there was a whole sort of dance and like subculture and whatever. There's all this stuff around it. So yeah, this is called Juke Party Elegy because I'm old. And I guess this has a formal constraint which will become sort of apparent. There's a sort of repeating thing, but you'll hear it or not. First of all of our needs are suspect as politicians. Politicians have made hay out of our bodies. Bodies displayed and splayed out in various stages of unmaking. Unmaking as wardrobe or life cycle or monument of silence to forget. Forget them though, I'm talking today about us. Us who've been in basements or skating rinks with no skates. Skate parties at their end or kid rinks turned into dance floors. Floors unwaxed but sweat and body made slick. Slick talk spilled from tall tees until a cell phone clip is freed. Freedom to take numbers and dances until mama called mad. Mad you ain't picked up. But ain't no good service underground. Grounded wasn't the word though. It was on punishment. Meant to call but didn't, don't count like 3 numbers on a pick 4. For the right dance of soft velour on denim starched hard to say it ain't worth mama's backhand. Hands on your knees like a part of a prayer. Prayer in this case was maybe to something other than God. Goddamn, I miss it though. It was a thrill. Thrilling to want and hope you were wanted. Wanted sometimes to avoid parties because crowds. Crowding meant maybe a fight or worse. Worse now, it might mean I catch something bad. Bad, but not even in the fun way. Cool. Let's see. So this next poem is called Repass. I guess if this is like not a sort of common phrase, a repass is basically like the gathering that happens sort of after a funeral. Usually at like someone's house, you bring a bunch of food, whatever. I don't know. The poem references cards. Anybody can get it if you're trying to play some spades. So, yeah. Repass. We give thanks for all the food served after the food served at the fellowship hall. We give thanks for the small house packed like piff into a cousin's white owl. We give thanks for the bottles blessed and cracked over sidewalk crack in memory of. This repast where cousins meet cousins and hatchets bury after burying, and we keep the fights to the card table. This repast we might finally all hop in a photo like a game of double dutch. This repast we trade stories and recall how loving and shiesty our loved one was. This repast or soon after, surely somebody will turn up pregnant, as is the cycle. Y'all don't know nothing about this groove on the radio when music was music. Y'all don't know nothing about that potato salad with the imitation mayo that no cooking auntie brought and a hero hid under trash. Y'all don't know nothing about this hand I got, but I know the only way you'll win is if you bet you'll lose. We lose so much, so many, and have so much less than some, and yet we gain even from this pain something to sit on our stomachs other than a hungry grief. Cool. All right. Okay, yeah, the next poem is called Elegy for Armstead. All you need to know, so Armstead is my grandfather's name. He passed away in like early 2021. And it's my middle name. My name is Nathaniel Armstead Marshall. I don't know, in case you ever want to try to steal my identity, I don't know. Yeah, so this has an epigraph from him. It's a pickup line that he taught me as a little boy. I used to like candy, but now I'm sweet on you. Armstead Carlos Griffin. First grade, you gave me game. Pickup lines, I guess, for the playground. You chaperoned that trip downtown to watch the Olympic torch wind its way down south to Atlanta. You were the oldest chaperone and cool as the other pillow in a lonely lover's bed. Damn, granddaddy, I thought you would live forever, for my whole life, for long enough to see me give your name down another generation at least. I know that is child logic, but I'm your child, your first boy, 50 some odd years in until we got to be together. You left us, although you did wait for me, my stupid move across the country meaning I had to fly home before you flew home, granddaddy. We all stopped fighting to make sure you made off in love. Granddaddy, the only punches thrown that weekend were at the air, mad at every breath you stopped drawing in. Granddaddy, death is ugly. You stopped walking well before. Then you stopped eating that last week. Then you didn't drink. The last thing you forgot was how to swallow. Granddaddy, we sponged water into your mouth, onto your lips, not because it would hold you on this plane, just because it was the closest thing to praying we could consider. I'm a lie, granddaddy. When I say we, I mean my mama and my godmother and my nephew and his father and my sister most of all. They held you down most, and I mostly held myself as if in a hug. I am useless in grief. Granddaddy, death is ugly. Granddaddy, you were beautiful. I just sat with you, thinking about a field trip, or thinking about your smile, or thinking about the rich smell of your pipe smoke, or thinking about how you were a recovering alcoholic who never quite got clean. And honestly, I'm most angry that we never had a drink while you could still remember how to swallow down good wine or something cheap and sweet. Cool. All right. Okay. Let's see. I got like a few more elegies and then we'll bring it back up. Like one or two, whatever. Let's see. Fuck it, I guess I'll do this one. All right, cool. Yeah. Elegy for a failed mentor. I don't know why why y'all so shady? What's going on? All right, come on. All right. Tighten up, y'all. All right. Elegy for a failed mentor. You always told me I would leave and come back, and that was fine and necessary. You were only talking about the city then. You were always talking about the city, saying it was ours for the reshaping. I never wanted cities. I wanted brothers and lovers, and my mother's houses all unreversed mortgaged. I wanted clean bills of health for the men in my family. I wanted to write my poems and do my work and keep it at the crib at day's end. I know I'm a traitor to you, and maybe that's fair. I bounced. I told you about yourself, then I bounced again. I kept my distance even when we were closest. I took talents places without you. Maybe I was disloyal, but remember all I know and still haven't said. Remember moving out that apartment and me helping move the boxes. Remember the things you gave me and what I gave you. Remember, when you are tied like we are, things aren't shaken so loosely without bad fruit falling after good. I know that when I remember my life's biggest heartbreaks, my baddest breakups, the splits that kept me up at night or down at dawn, it's you and nothing else. Cool. All right. All right, now we're gonna get to the rhyming section of the thing. All right, this is called My Niece Be Mourning on the Internet. I be mourning on my own though. I be crying, but no tears, until that tear me up. Then I be screaming like a fear come to life. I be mourning in the night, in the day, in the dusk, in the dust that my people have turned to that haunts me, all my allergies, little elegies, little love song, little hurts, every day just to say I'm alive, I'm the luck, I'm the lucky, but sometimes I'm a loser, all the loss that we found in these years, it will crush you like a bullet, like a bus crash, like a bat swung to your temple. So I be here and be mourning every morning like a coffee. This what wakes me, this what takes me till it takes me where I rest. Cool. Okay, all right, we're gonna try a thing. Let's see how this goes. All right. Okay. Recently. So, no, just play the thing, dog. Come on. Okay. So this is just a thing my friend made, and he sent it to me.
I'm trying to get to this money. I'm trying to get to the. I gotta get to this money. I'm trying to get to the. I'm trying to get to this money. I'm trying to get to the. I gotta get to this money. I'm trying to get to the. Scheming on a beamer, beamers on the Nina. Dreaming on some evil. My niggas patriots with the Desert Eagle. I just roll with Jay like I'm Benny Siegel. I got class, so they figured they're punk.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, all right, my homeboy sent me that. Well, so that's him. So me and my friend we've had a rap group since we were in high school. And you know, sometimes we just make raps for fun. So he sent me that like months ago, and I hadn't really been able to do anything with it. Then being here, like the other night, I wrote this thing, so I'll just try it. And I'm gonna slow it down because honestly, rapping that fast is like hard, and it's a little confusing because like you can't necessarily hear the words. Let's see. What do you need to know? That's actually. So like, you know how you do that sometimes where you're like, these are the things you need to know when you step into a reading? It's kind of impossible to do with a rap song because like it's such a dense form. So you don't, there's like a bunch of things you need to know, but it's fine. I guess like, the only one I guess I'll say is, cause maybe this, so I'm from the far south side of Chicago. I'm from like a neighborhood called West Pullman. So yeah, that kind of comes up, right? Whatever, I don't know. Let's see, all right, fuck it, let me see. Okay. I gotta get to the dough, Joe, I grew up broke. Chicago's in 90s, they gang bang, they threw up folks. New people then active, got caught up in traffic and trapped by the villains. I hate paying taxes because instead of funding schools, they fund the prisons. They take up the children and make them the numbers. They'll give you a tech or a tech education to make you diplomas. Or have you on courts where the refs call them techs and they make you the runners. In my hood, the homies was lions and my man, the police was hunters. Dark days is upon us. I stay from the hundreds. So that's what I need for the red line and greeting the investment from us. Jay-Z got a bill. Elon got a bunch. I come from the trench, want to dine on the rich and they looking like lunch. Back in the days, mine was free and reduced. Now I walk in gentrified restaurants, order some gin and some juice. My pen is the truth that Florida might ban, but I'm just a Pullman reporter who orders his quarters in hand. Cause I gotta get to the money. I gotta get to the, yeah. All right, cool. All right, we did it, cool. All right. All right. Fuck it. Okay. All right. So we don't have too much time. Let's see. We got time. Wow. LOL. Here we are. All right. We'll do like. All right. Yeah. We'll do this. This is called Big Gay Ice Cream. Yeah. There it is. I finally make it clear across the continent from divide to coastline. There were storms all over the eastern seaboard, and I could have been stuck with a canceled connecting flight. My question at the kiosk, where can you get me on the East Coast tonight? And thank God the airline agent took pity and put me on the night's last flight to Washington, D.C. I don't think a black man was ever so thankful to Reagan. A yellow cab to Union Station and the night's last train to New York. Praise our far-flung loves and lives. The West Coast homie who kept me company on the phone, dissecting rap songs while I fought sleep. The city that accepted my heaving train like a heartworm was moist and impossibly dirty, cold and still not as buzzy as before the plague. I walked the mile to our hotel room, too wired from conversation and too impatient from the dark night, dark-skinned cab of a New York that is still New York. Too impatient for the familiar anonymity of the rideshare. I needed no more strangers that wouldn't pass in a moment's notice. I needed no more presents but yours. The rats did their shivering dance through the black sky of garbage bags piled high on the curb. I thought about how much I hate rats and love you. I say I hate rats, but return to this infested city and stare hard on every subway platform at a downward angle. It's gross. Dear love, I hope I do not do this to you. Express a feeling and move in a way that invites the opposite thing. I want to make an honest love. I want to look for the things you want to show and gaze happily. I I want to offer you your own ability to have vermin under the tracks and trains that ride true. The next night, we ate joyously, the sharp burn of Sichuan food, and then you wanted that ice cream with the absurd name or some other similar confection shop. I am not a dessert person, but I will travel over any method to be in your embrace, and so I ate some sweet that less than an hour later made me run liquid from my bubbling gut. I sat on the toilet and rocked hard like a heavy sermon. After I recovered and washed, we made love in a After I recovered and washed, we made love in a waterlogged, ugly city, in a room too small for jumping jacks. And months later, when we finally married and live in the same time zone, you say that my diarrhea gives you fond memories of our lovemaking. Wait. Sometimes love is like rats, disgusting and dangerous, and always going to live next to humans, always going to reflect our waste and our wanderings. Cool. All right, I guess I'll just end with one more. Yeah, thank y'all. So this poem is, it's dedicated to a mentor of mine, a guy named Brother Mike Hawkins. And I guess really all you should know is Brother Mike was like very important in Chicago, and specifically sort of in cultivating young talent. He like hosted a bunch of open mics and continually sort of opened up his space and opened up the spaces that he ran. And a lot of us owe a lot to him. So yeah, whatever. I can't remember what we ate after Brother Mike's funeral, but I think it was MacArthur's. West Side genius wrapped in foil and carted up the stairs to splay out across the table like a lover. Who was there? Some dear friends who were so dear we became family. And some who hurt me or I hurt so much that we can't talk anymore. But right now, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about love and about Brother Mike. I want to talk about power to the people. Mike, brother, I was 19 and arrogant, and you gave me a mic to rock. Mike, brother, you taught so many of us what love looked like at a 9 to 5. Sometimes it is amazing to me that it was your job to make spaces for us. Sometimes it makes me mad. How does someone attach a wage to what you made? Priceless in the landscape of our hearts. Mike, brother, you made homes in hostile lands for us who were children of migrations. Mike, brother, your DAP and permission made artistic movements happen, but I don't love you for that. I love you because you looked at children, black and brown and Jewish and jailed and academic warninged and ascendant and suspended, and you told us we could be someone because we already were. I can't remember the food at our makeshift repast out west. I just remember at your service they played Marvin's a cappella, and the vocal runs bounced off the walls while we cried and wanted to love you and love each other for longer than the silence between each right on. Cool, thank y'all.